Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session where we will be talking about space-based tech that's changing our world. My name is Jillian Walker, and I am Vice President with Everest Group, and I'm here with a few of my colleagues that I work with closely, who have just recently completed research that is forthcoming covering innovations in space-based tech. So we thank you all for joining. And as we wait for others to join, why don't we start off with a quick icebreaker for those of you who are already here. If you could post in the comment box, what is your favorite space-based themed movie or television show? Okay, so as folks are doing that, as I noted, Everest Group has recently completed about to be released research on the top 10 game-changing technologies in space. And today we want to have an open discussion around some of the findings of that research. But first, why don't we take a minute and have our contributors introduce themselves. Isaac?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Julian. Thanks for having me on this series. My name is Isaac Prem Singh. I am a research director here at Advanced Scientific Group within Everest Group. And as part of my job here, I do research on emerging technologies and really happy to be sharing some of our findings from our recently concluded study here. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Arjun?
Hello, I am Arjun Mehta. I am a research manager with the Everest Group, and I have a decade of consulting experience for semiconductor computing and artificial intelligence. Thank you so much. Happy to be a part of this discussion.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Manchu.
Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I'm Imanshu Matre, and as an analyst at Everest Group, I work on a range of emerging technologies with special focus into semiconductors, AI, and space. And I am glad to be here and to present my thoughts on some of the emerging techs in the space area.
Great. So thank you all once again for joining. I am very much looking forward to today's discussion. And just as a reminder for everyone who's joining in, we do welcome questions that you can enter in the comments section just throughout today's conversation. Okay, so first I want to start here with Isaac. Isaac, since you lead a lot of the research in this area, when we talk about space-based tech, what exactly does that include? It seems to be a pretty broad field. So if you can help us narrow that down a little bit. And, really what have been historically the drivers of innovation in this space?
Yeah, sure. So as part of our technology-focused research here at Everest Group, we explore space industry with a foresight lens, thinking medium-term to long-term, but also looking at technologies that are impacting different applications across different domains. We are focused on enabling technology that are pushing the boundaries of space exploration, essentially, while also improving human life and infrastructure on Earth. So we segment the space-based tech into 7 technical domains. So this includes space energy, spacecraft propulsion technologies, communication, in-space manufacturing, space robotics, and space health. So when we look at space as an industry, space has always been and continues to be at the forefront of new technology innovation, right? So many first-generation space inventions by NASA and other space agencies weren't just breakthroughs for space missions, even though they were meant to be that way, but they've become cornerstones for modern science and technology on Earth. So when we look at motivations and drivers historically, behind every early space innovation, there has been some level of geopolitical urgency, and the mission requirements have become even more extreme as we move more deeper, and also the need for human survival and different aspects of how humans and astronauts will survive during the mission as well. And all of this combines together with the scientific ambition of these space agencies as well. So we've seen many space agencies and companies having this desire to be first in orbit, first on the moon, and first in interplanetary exploration as well, which has led to pioneering inventions, especially in the 80s and the 90s. So we've seen the expansion of satellite systems which are focused on Earth observation, for example, GPS and satellite communications as well. This was also the period when NASA, the European Space Agency, launched the Hubble's Space Telescope, right? And Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency also took the Hiten optical navigation camera system to lunar orbit. So really the 80s and the 90s were the time period when we saw many of those early inventions being applied to different applications in communications and navigation and Earth observation as well. But in the early 2000s, or the millennium era, as we call the space era, if you just kind of segment it into 3 or 4 time periods, the millennium era ushered in the commercial deep space exploration with an intentional focus on enabling more frequent and affordable missions, right? So since then, flagship initiatives like the NASA's New Millennial Program, which has nurtured strong international cooperation on the International Space Station. They've also encouraged private sector partnerships, and they've created new tech transfer opportunities as well. And this has essentially driven more open innovation in the space industry.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot there, right? Some of the geopolitical factors accelerating innovation. You mentioned some of the communications technologies that we've taken advantage of. What are some of the shifts as we move forward, looking for new motivations for development of space-based tech? Like, what are the drivers headed into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we track is the mission objectives, right? So there are different missions that different space agencies launch, and there are certain priorities that each of these missions have, and that kind of ties back into the R&D priorities as well for different stakeholders in the value chain. So space agencies worldwide have clearly shifted from focusing almost exclusively on national security and defense motivated missions to more diverse missions where we see more commercial partnerships, sustainably focused scientific research, planetary defense, and more recently, space resource utilization as well. So as part of our recently concluded top 10 game-changing technologies in space, we analyzed all of these activities of different space agencies and their technology partners. And we clearly understand certain key shifts and emerging technology themes that we have kind of consolidated that we believe will have a significant impact during the next 4 to 6 years. So first theme that we see is to enable autonomy in deep space missions, right? So as space exploration moves more towards sustainable lunar presence, Mars missions, and mega constellations, autonomy in space systems has become increasingly critical, right? So reducing reliance on Earth-based control, enabling rapid decision-making, and supporting the deployment of complex multi-agent systems in space environment. These are some of the critical drivers that we see linked to this particular theme. Secondly, we see intense focus on building a sustainable and resilient in-space infrastructure. So value creation activities in the space industry are expanding beyond exploration and connectivity to in-space manufacturing and infrastructure. So enabling in-orbit orchestration, resource mining, in-situ utilization, and energy harvesting. All of these to support the establishment of orbital habitats are emerging innovation areas as well. And thirdly, we see and focus on extending the reach and connectivity for human access. So this is where we see intense focus on global internet connectivity, enhancing human survivability in space, and the potential that it can offer for commercial opportunities as well for different stakeholders in the industry. So connectivity solutions, innovative propulsion systems, space medicine, all of these are enablers as we see for low cost, long duration missions. Yeah. So these are some of the themes that we see, and we have kind of identified some technologies that we've tried to place in different parts of the grid that we will be discussing further in the discussion as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And of course, these are really interesting shifts. And I want to take a second here and just note, since you mentioned about a complimentary copy of an article that we recently authored on space resources. more specifically on lunar hydrogen. And the potential that that technologies that help access this resource hold for things like lunar colonization or refueling on the moon. So our article discusses some of these technologies that are needed to mine, to extract, to make use of that resource in space. And again, you can access that that research through a link in the chat. But now, I do want to turn to Himanshu and bring him into the discussion a little bit, since you've worked quite a bit in space communication technology, and that's obviously a key theme here. When we think about space-based tech that's deployed on a mass scale, and I think many of us would think of things like satellite systems and communication systems, how is that technology changing? Again, in terms of communications, and now we're even thinking about computing in space for that matter.
That's an interesting area to discuss, Gillian. So space-based technology is evolving incredibly fast, and communications and computing are right at the heart of that transformation. So if we take a step back and let's see 10 years ago, just like Isaac explained, space communication was mostly about satellites that were beaming TV signals and GPS data. But today we are moving towards something much more powerful. We're trying to build a space-based internet and an in-orbit computing networks. So I'll quickly break this down into three of the most exciting technologies which are driving this shift. So first one being the free space optical communication. So this technology is about using lasers instead of radio waves to send signals or send data through the space. So think of this as a fiber optic internet, but without the fiber. So earlier, this year, NASA's Psyche mission, it made quite headlines by transmitting laser data from around 22 million miles away, using its own deep space optical communication system. And the result was that they were able to achieve speeds up to 267 megabits per second. So that is faster than many of our Wi-Fi connections that we have in our homes, and that too from a deep space. So that is an amazing thing that has been achieved by NASA. Also, lasers are the future of space communication because they have less interference, they have more privacy, and they have faster speeds. So this opens doors to real-time data sharing from missions on Moon, Mars, or even beyond. But what is changing? I mean, free space optical communication has been there for quite a bit of time. But what is changing now is that with the help of AI, we can auto align, these satellites. So AI is now helping with the auto alignment. So these lasers can stay locked on a target, even between the fast moving satellites. So that's been a major hurdle until now recently. Another one is the use of meta-surface-based wavefronts sensors to mitigate the atmospheric turbulence effects in real time. As we know that turbulence is the major inhibitor of this communication type, and meta-surface technology is kind of helping to address these kind of challenges. Another important technology when it comes to space communication is terahertz communication. This one is lesser known, but it is just as exciting because terahertz waves, they sit between the microwaves and infrared light. They offer extremely high bandwidth, which means you can send huge amounts of data quickly. In the late 2023, I think, researchers in Japan, they achieved over 100 gigabits per second using the terahertz in vacuum, which is where they try to simulate these space conditions. So now, why does this terahertz communication matter? It is because we are trying to build massive satellite constellations with thousands of satellites. As we saw, SpaceX has over 6,000 satellites, and they are growing, exponentially. And these satellites, they need to talk to each other. And terahertz links could be like Wi-Fi in space. They could connect these satellite swarms without needing any ground relays. If we talk about some innovation, what is advancing here now is that advanced materials and chip level terahertz transmitters, they are making this tech smaller, cooler, and more energy efficient, which means that we can actually start building these terahertz communication into future spacecraft. And one more important technology which we cannot miss in today's world is satellite internet, and of course orbital mesh networks, which is the advanced form of that. This is the most visible change to everyday life, because companies like Starlink and Amazon's Project Kuiper, they are launching thousands of these satellites to provide low latency internet across the entire planet. They have also proven the application of this terrestrially. Starlink has over 6,000 satellites in orbit, and you know, even though if we have these many numbers of satellites, it is not just about more satellites. The real innovation is that these satellites are now started to talk to each other directly using the lasers, and they're kind of forming orbital mesh networks. That means that data can hop across these satellites in space before it even touches the ground, which has huge advantages in reducing latency and bypassing ground-based infrastructure, entirely. So we won't be, we won't require cables, towers, or reliable internet connection to access the internet with this technology. So with all these communication technologies, where is everything going? We are kind of moving towards a world where the data is processed, routed, and managed in orbit. So like we discussed, laser beams, they handle long distance high speed communication. Terahertz, they connect satellites like routers in space. And we have also AI, which manages traffic, latency, and repair stuff. So eventually this infrastructure could support AI powered Earth monitoring, applications like AI powered Earth monitoring, live streaming from Mars, or even interplanetary cloud computing. So it's no longer just about getting signals to and from space, but it is about building an internet in space.
Okay. So a lot of that technology is about moving data, right, through space.
Right.
But what about some technologies around moving things, right? So propulsion systems, really. How are these new systems improving, especially in terms of power for things like deep space missions? And what is their focus? The focus of innovation there, is it really around low carbon energy dense fuels? Do we see a complete transformation of propulsion systems? What are we seeing in terms of the evolution in technology in that area?
Yeah, this is also a really exciting area of space exploration right now. So when we talk about propulsion for deep space, it is not just about improving fuels anymore, but we are talking about full transformation in how we think about the power and motion in space. And the two most promising technologies which are leading this shift currently are the ion thrust propulsion and solar sails. So ion propulsion is like something out of science fiction, but it is very real and already it is being used. So instead of burning fuel in big bursts like a rocket, these ion engines, they use electricity to ionize a gas like xenon, and then they eject these ions out of the back at extremely high speed. How did this technology begin generating traction? So back in 2023, NASA's DART mission, which successfully it nudged an asteroid using this next generation ion system, and it used it for precise trajectory corrections. Along with that, European Space Agency is preparing to use this advanced ion propulsion for cargo tugs and asteroid missions. So this propulsion system, it is expected to be increasingly used in future systems, because this particular technology, it is extremely fuel efficient and they can operate over years. So it is perfect for missions like Mars, asteroids, or even outer planets. And the plus point with this is they pair well with the nuclear or solar power sources. So it is not just a better fuel, it is a whole new kind of engine built for deep space. And the second technology that I was talking is about solar sails. Now this one really captures the imagination, because these solar sails, they don't use fuel at all. Instead, they harness the momentum from photons, which are the particles of light from the sun, and they slowly push the aircraft forward. So think of it like a windsurfing in space. So the sail, it captures the light, and even though each photon has no mass, it does have some momentum. And over time, this builds up enough to accelerate a spacecraft silently and endlessly into space. So why this particular technology is transformative is because it uses no fuel, so it has got no weight penalty, and these solar cells, they can go anywhere, where the conventional propulsion cannot, uh, like the stable observation points beyond Earth and so on, and they will enable ultra long duration missions without the resupply of fuel. So if we combine this with AI driven navigation, then we are looking at a spacecraft that can self adjust and sail autonomously across the solar system. So it will be an incredible achievement. So with these propulsion technologies, we are not just tweaking our old rocket designs with greener fuels. We are kind of witnessing a complete rethinking of how we move through space. So these technologies are essential for the next wave of missions, I think. And if we see the trends currently that are going on in the space propulsion, I think we are entering a new era where propulsion systems don't just get us to the orbit, but they would enable applications like interplanetary cargo tugs, asteroid mining probes, solar weather observatories, or even potential missions to the edge of the solar system.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good perspective on propulsion technologies, Himanshu. We've just lost Jillian's connection now. I'll just, try to move on with the questions that we have. I mean, we wanted to ask Arjun now, considering that he's been doing quite a bit of research on manufacturing and also manufacturing in the context of parts and components that are going into space, but also helping humans potentially become habitants in space environment, right? So, Arjun, so relative to a longer time horizon, when we're thinking about how we can amplify some of these technologies and its implications around things where we see orbital and even lunar habitats, places where more people can live in space. So if we consider exploration to Mars, and then we have long duration missions that take us to Mars. So what are some of the interesting technologies that you're seeing in terms of research supporting these goals that we see from different companies?
First of all, thank you, Isaac, for taking over this discussion. I think it's a very fascinating space to explore. Like you mentioned about communication technologies, propulsion technologies. I think we are also here to discuss the sustainability technologies, right? I mean, especially the sustainability of the long duration space missions that we are talking about. So let me break this down into two essential technologies I feel that we should be discussing about. The first is microgravity 3D printing, and the second is space medicine. So, as the name suggests, the first one, the microgravity 3D printing, right? It is 3D printing in the microgravity environment. As the things stand today, transporting even a kilogram into the space can cost thousands of dollars, right? And 3D printing is emerging as a critical enabler for in-space sustainability. It helps us to fabricate tools and components in the orbits, and it offers a transformative shift for the supply chain. So in the near term, the research indicates that the primary value of microgravity 3D printing is supporting the astronauts with the cost effective on demand production. However, in the long term, there is much wider area. Why not, like you mentioned, printing the entire space habitat on its own, or bioprinting human organs, right, in space? So, for instance, I have been tracking this startup in Florida, based in Florida, Redwire, and it has taken a significant step forward in space biomanufacturing. So it has showcased its 3D printing technology capability to print a human meniscus in the microgravity environment, right? I mean, isn't it a significant milestone for regenerative medical solutions? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but however, easier said than done. I feel 3D printing and microgravity have its own unique technical challenges. And one such challenge that the stakeholders are really looking forward to address is how these materials, the molten materials, they behave differently without the gravity, complicating the layer bonding and precision stuff like that. So I think it's not only deploying a 3D printing machine in the long term, but also the entire ecosystem that we are talking about, the post processing, the robotic assembly capabilities along with it, and those stuff like that. The second technology, very critical from a sustainability standpoint for long duration missions, is the space medicine. Now, as cliche it may sound, we are not just discussing about motion sickness or anti-inflammatory drugs for the astronauts here. We are discussing about the healthcare facilities in the space, right? So it is ability to carry out robotic assisted surgeries or 3D printed human tissues, and even develop radiation resistant drugs. So, however, one primary challenge we have seen its adoption in the terrestrial environment. However, for the space environment, we have witnessed limited engagement from the private players, private investments, to be more precise. Obviously, because of the high risk and the extended timelines that it takes to develop and deploy space specific solutions into this area. But I feel that going ahead, as the space tourism particularly matures, right, we should be able to have more private investments. The deployment, the development, and the entire ecosystem that goes around it will develop at a much faster speed, and we should be seeing much development into these. So these two technologies, I feel that will stand out in by the end of this decade, probably.
Wow. Yeah, I think those are really kind of pivotal and quite transformative in how we imagine space economy and the space habitats evolving, right? But clearly, as you pointed out, it's not just machines and humans, or setting up infrastructure there in space, but we're also looking at how these machines and humans will coexist, and how we can build that ecosystem of systems that will operate, autonomously, or learn from each other in space as well. So, for instance, if you think about new human control of a machine which may be inaccessible or too far away, we highlighted some of the communication technologies that are coming up, terahertz communication and others that are going to enable large bandwidth, high speed, low latency communication. But what do you see as the current state of autonomous systems being developed for space deployment? Like, do you see any transformative technologies there in terms of how systems are getting developed for autonomous operations in space?
Yeah, so one interesting technology that we have covered in the research is also celestial bots. Now, to put it in simple words, they are basically humanoids developed for specifically for space applications. So if it's about like a space robot, but having human movements, right? So if you can imagine like what kind of advanced electronics, mechanics, and the resilient robotics that is required to uh, cater to the demands in space and to operate in zero gravity extreme temperatures, right? So this is one area which is gaining a lot of traction. There are lots of startups and universities that are working towards this, developing humanoids for space applications. One innovation that I would like to mention is a Chinese university, right? I mean, they highlighted how they have developed a solar powered humanoid to assist the astronauts in space. And it is merely 55 pounds, right? So look how we are looking forward to design something lightweight, very simple, trying to simplify the architecture and also utilize the resources in the space at the same time. So by 2030, I feel space humanoids or celestial bots, like we call it, it will support not only us, the astronauts with tools and components and stuff like that, but also it's like creating lunar based habitats or long duration Mars missions, or even support space station maintenance and stuff like that. So this is an interesting technology that we can be tracking in the near term.
Awesome. Awesome. Nice to have you back, Jillian. I believe you're able to hear us now. Okay, I think there's still a lag. But I'll just go ahead. I think we've spoken about a few of these technologies and how we see them evolve and some of the interesting applications as well. So I'll just go ahead and take you through what we've been doing as part of the study. At this
Mhm.
time, I think we'll also like to share the grid that we've come up with as part of the study. So what we've essentially done here is to assess the near future potential of space technologies. We have mapped 10 frontier innovations that we have identified as top 10 game-changing technologies on a 2 by 2 grid, right? So we've used two lenses. So one on the x-axis, you can see, is the market adoption potential. So what it essentially means is how likely will users of different technologies here switch to these technologies within the next 4 to 6 years. And on the y-axis, we see the technology disruption potential, which is essentially defined by to what degree does the technology fundamentally change or replace today's dominant solutions. So this frameworks is created in to keep in mind that when we're looking at evaluating some of these technologies, it'll help us distinguish transformative bets from incremental enablers, moonshots, and niche plays, right? So we have this set of 10 technologies, and as you can see, we would like to take you through the technologies on the top right quadrant. As you can see, the ones that have the maximum disruption potential and market adoption potential as well. Uh, Deep space optics is clearly one of those right on top in terms of disruption. And then we also have ion thrust propulsion, autonomous spacecraft control, and satellite internet. So these are technologies that are no longer emerging, as we have already seen evidences that were highlighted by both Himanshu and Arjun. So there are certain evidences that are clearly pointing to taking this technology from lab scale to prototypes to evidence testing in pilot environment, and also taking it to space environment for space flight testing as well. So they're no longer emerging; they're accelerating towards mainstream deployment, and we see that these are transformative and foundational for building the next generation of space infrastructure. So these are systems that will define as a data backbone, a logistics layer, and autonomy architecture for space operations in the next decade. So we've also, I would just like to, highlight the deep space optics, which is currently positioned right on top as part of our analysis. Clearly, in terms of disruption potential, this is one technology that we believe is going to be quite transformative. And it is critical as we move into the next era of autonomous space exploration, sustainable space infrastructure, and human presence beyond Earth. Deep space optics will play a critical role. And as Himanshu highlighted, uh, the deep space optical communication will enable massive bandwidth for transmitting real-time data, telemetry, and video as well. So when we think about futuristic technologies like these, we like to envision a scenario on how some of these technologies can come together and enable new way of working in a new environment, right? So in specific to deep space optics, we envision a scenario in which small swarm robotics, autonomous navigation, and real-time sensor fusion will converge on lunar and Mars bases to create self-organized space systems that are capable of completing mission-critical tasks with shared objectives and without human control. So this is going to be enabled by low latency, high throughput, laser-based optical communications, which will be the communication backbone for a scenario like this. And we're also seeing some interesting use cases that companies are investigating for potential deployment in lunar bases and Mars bases, such as the autonomous lunar-based construction, where we're seeing some of the developments coming in from equipment for regolith mining and excavation in the lunar surface, and also 3D printing equipment and technologies that will be able to use the regolith material and extracted material for use in 3D printing different components as well. And we're also seeing deep space optical links connecting in-space assets, which will be critical to share progress, adjust tasks, and relocate roles dynamically. So we still need to have this kind of a seamless orchestration between different systems and subsystems in space environment. And I believe that deep space optics and different communication technologies within those are going to be critical. And there are different commercial efforts that are also in play. to test and deploy deep space optics, and it's accelerating. So there are a few missions and few startups that I would like to highlight here, like companies like Mynaric, which is in partnership with Northrop, and also SpaceLink, which is also building its optical mesh networks. These are critical developments that we believe that will transform how deep space optics will be applied, and how we're going to enable this space habitat to be infrastructure to be built out. Yeah.
So, Isaac, I have one question. Like you mentioned about the technologies and the startups also. Himanshu, if I am supposed to ask you, like, what is your favorite startup from all the technologies that you have been tracking? What would be that one startup that you would like to talk about?
I think when it comes to space communication, Mynaric is one of the most aggressive startups uh, I can think about, because it is making production scale free space optical hardware for satellites, drones, and even airborne platforms. So it is there, in a diversified applications. But what makes them unique is how fast they are turning these free space optical hardware from the lab tech into a scalable hardware. And on top of that, Mynaric has also secured significant contracts, such as supplying optical communication terminals for the U.S. Space Development Agency, for their Tranche 1 transport and tracking layer programs. So this makes Mynaric, or I would say places Mynaric in a stronger position in terms of investments and R&D also. So if you're looking at who will shape the future of low latency, high speed satellite communication, I think Mynaric is one of the companies to follow.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it looks like I'm back here, and apropos to having some of this amazing new communications technology help with some of these cutouts. If I can ask Isaac and the rest of you, to talk maybe a little bit about how some of these space-based innovations can affect or impact our lives here on Earth, because it's not just about innovating for habitats in space or moving data in space, right? A lot of these technologies are being developed for application here in terrestrial settings. So why don't you talk a little bit about how we can benefit from those technologies today?
Yeah, sure, Julia. I mean, yeah, I think all of us can chime in on this, because we've seen quite a few requests that have recently come in from some of our clients as well. And we've spoken to few founders who are developing technologies that are kind of using some learnings from the deployment in space. And that's how space as an industry has traditionally been the frontier for innovation that could potentially have a broad aperture in terms of impact that it can have in our lives on Earth. And many of these cutting edge systems developed for extreme demands in the space environment are now directly transforming how we operate here on Earth across multiple verticals like energy, communications, health, agriculture, and manufacturing included. So there are certain technology transfer programs, such as the NASA spin-off program, that actively track and facilitate commercial use of space-developed technology to support its technology transfer office and for licensing these technologies to the private sector. So there are quite a few that we can really talk and highlight here, but I just would like to take one which is quite ambitious and potentially transformative, which is space-based solar power. So solar panels and arrays being floated on in space environment to power some of those subsystems in International Space Station is not new, but I think we're moving to a place where space-based solar power, collecting solar energy in space, could potentially transmit as energy to be utilized on Earth. And this is going to be, collected by solar panels that can operate under continuous sunlight, free from atmospheric interference, and there is no day-night cycle, right? So imagine that we will have 24/7 uninterrupted power generation and capability that will transform how we access and use affordable energy here on Earth. And it's just not going to be about peak generation anymore. So space-based solar power could offer new energy delivery models, especially for remote or disaster-stricken regions where traditional grids potentially fail and take too long to deploy. So in that sense, clearly, clean energy converging with space-based solar systems, and which essentially means that we will have uninterrupted, affordable energy and access to all things that we love to do here. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that we have time for some questions. But before we move to those, just one final question for the panelists here. And I'd like to ask each of you to maybe go around and talk a little bit about, who are the key, let's say, movers and shakers, the key drivers of innovation in some of these areas. So if you could talk a little bit to what area you want to discuss in that respect, and who you think we really need to be following closely in terms of how they're developing that technology. So let's start with the technology area, who that impactful player is, and what your reasoning is for that suggestion. Isaac, if you want to go first, then we can go to Arjun and Himanshu.
For sure. Yeah, I think we have already discussed quite a few, examples and other things related to this technology in this LinkedIn Live session, which is satellite internet. And this is an area which is rapidly emerging as a critical layer of the global digital infrastructure. And it's going to enable broadband connectivity in regions where terrestrial networks are limited or non-existent, right? So as we see low latency, high capacity internet access accelerating, we see two of the most influential technology players, Amazon and SpaceX, directly competing with each other in this technology. So, which is essentially to say that SpaceX has been the early mover in this space, but also currently dominating just by adding about 2.7 million users last year, and they've almost reached close to 5 million users worldwide, and they're still expanding their constellation of LEO satellites. Uh, while this is happening, and we're seeing a lot of developments from different players who are developing the hardware to build out the infrastructure, Amazon is entering the space as well, which is quite uh, critical and transformative in a way that we see two big major players, contributing to push this technology to the wider audience. So Project Kuiper, which Himanshu also highlighted earlier, by Amazon, is a little bit in alignment with what SpaceX has been successful doing, but also it has certain differentiating aspects to how the hardware is being deployed, and the type of network architecture that Amazon is building and deploying for satellite internet that seems to be a little bit differentiated as well. And we see that becoming a sort of a theme that both SpaceX and Starlink and Amazon's Project Kuiper will do it together. But in essence, we see Amazon having an edge, especially in terms of their capability to integrate with the Amazon Web Services, especially their cloud integration capability, and how different services on AWS can also enable new capabilities for their customers, especially B2B customers for satellite internet. So there are a few differentiating aspects that I believe there is a reason behind why Project Kuiper is something that we need to keep an eye on. Project Kuiper uses certain optical intersatellite links, which are quite different from what Starlink uses, but also they've tested their OISLs in space, and they've achieved 30% faster speeds as compared to terrestrial fiber optic cables that are quite significant in terms of how this internet speed can be improved as well. And also the AWS enabled latency hack, which Project Kuiper is currently leveraging in terms of how AWS services and infrastructure integrate with their capabilities on satellite internet as well. And this is going to reduce latency even further across its network. And we're also seeing multi-purpose connectivity that will enable customers of AWS in terms of how they're able to access some of these software-defined capabilities that AWS services offer. And this is going to be enabling dynamic management of data traffic and optimize network capacity, even for customers that are operating certain mission critical and secure data networks that need certain government oversight as well. So there are certain B2B versus B2B differentiation areas that Project Kuiper has, and Amazon is trying to leverage that.
Arjun, same question.
So I think there is one more interesting question from the audience that we have. What space technologies do you see as having the greatest potential for commercial application on Earth? So Jillian, merging this question with yours, what is the mover and shaker? I would like to go ahead with this question. I think data center applications is something that is going to be impacted big time. Currently, we are dependent on Earth for it, but the way the things are moving, like right, I mean, Isaac highlighted about the solar energy, the abundance of solar energy available in space, and there are so many other resources that we actually. I have been involved in a couple of queries where some innovators are looking forward to, deploy data centers into the space. In fact, there is a European startup called Thales Alenia, and they are working aggressively in this space, and they are having a plan of deploying up to 1 gigawatt of data center deployment by 2050. So that is a space, I think, and that is a company, Thales Alenia, a company for data centers in space, that will make some news possibly in the near term.
Great. And Himanshu, same question.
So I just discussed about the interesting company in the space communication area, which was Minari. I think it is outstanding. It is performing well. The other company that I would like to talk about is the Aerojet Rocketdyne when it comes to the propulsion system, because this company has been at its forefront when it comes to electric propulsion for deep space mission, and it has its proven advanced electric propulsion system operational. In addition to that, they also have their own ion thrusters, which powered the Dawn spacecraft, which orbited both the Vesta and the Ceres asteroid, which are in the asteroid belt, which was also the first in the space flight history. So, given their demonstration and having proven their mettle in these in such areas, I think they are positioned to lead. They are positioned to lead the propulsion area, I think, as compared to the other companies. And they were also involved in the NASA's DART mission, which we earlier discussed, which altered the orbit of the asteroid using the propulsion system. So they used that fine maneuvering of their ion propulsion system to nudge the asteroid that was there in their path. So I think because of this, Aerojet Rocketdyne could excel in the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've covered a pretty broad range of industries in today's conversation. So I'm curious, of those industries that we've covered, which is the one that you think is going to have the most or be most transformed by space-based technology in the next, say, 5 to 10 years, if you had to pick one? So again, I'll open it up to our panel.
I mean, my pick would be communications, especially how space and inter-satellite communication links will be accessible to a larger user base on Earth, and how that will transform industrial operations as well. We're seeing some of these integrations with data center services, how some of these applications that are currently running high intensity workloads can benefit from uninterrupted access to broadband internet with low latency. And that will also transform some of the manufacturing value chain and ecosystems that are evolving as well.
Just to add to that, I think I will go with space-based manufacturing as a key area that Isaac has highlighted.
I think edge computing in orbit would also be lucrative because companies are developing data processing capabilities directly on these satellites, which will highly reduce the latency and the bandwidth needs. So that could revolutionize how we handle everything from weather forecasting to live event streaming and everything.
Okay, great. And it looks like we have one question, another question from the audience. So talking about health innovation being considered during space research as well. So the question is, considering space station healthcare systems, can you highlight some major health issues that astronauts have to face, and what are the major steps or research being done to take care of human subjects?
I think to answer your question, Uday, astronauts on the right now we have been doing the rounds with the International Space Station, so we don't have much data about the other missions. But as far as International Space Station is concerned, astronauts have faced health challenges such as muscle and bone loss, vision changes, even the immune system dysregulation, and the radiation exposure. So NASA's Human Research Program, they have developed countermeasures like they exercise protocols, immune monitoring, and even radiation shielding to mitigate these risks and ensure that the astronauts' health stays good for a longer duration.
Okay, great. So I think with that, then it's time that we kind of wrap up here. So again, I just really want to thank our panelists, Isaac, Arjun, Himanshu, for today's discussion. And I want to thank all of you, of course, for joining us today. We are hopeful that you can take some of the insights away. We look forward to connecting again soon. And again, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about some of our work in space, please feel free to download a complimentary copy of our research on space resources, specifically extracting lunar hydrogen, which should be available in our comments section. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.